Calaroga Shark Media.
Hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Quick note, if you didn't listen over the weekend, Thanksgiving stuff, totally get it. Just want to point out the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday episodes were robust with a lot of actual news. It wasn't a filler weekend, so you might want to go back and check those out. Seth Meyers was on the Las Culturistas podcast with Bowen Yang and Matt Rogers. He revealed they almost did a Stefon movie. Almost might be an exaggeration, but he said there was a moment in time where the idea of a Stefon script was being discussed. There wasn't a scene that was written, but I did have a pitch for myself and Stefon because I knew it was going to be Stefon and James Franco or whoever. It wasn't going to be me and Stefon. I said, here's how I think it should start. It should start with Stefon at Weekend Update, and when it's over, I'm once again disappointed that as the city correspondent, he didn't bring up whatever St. Patrick's Day tips, and he says, to make it up to you, just come out and have a night with me and you together. Stefon's New York. And I'm like, all right, one night. Then you would do all these super fast cuts of he and I at the crazy clubs. That'd be the opening montage, and then it would end with me in a body bag, and Stefon would say, he's dead. And then the splash, Stefon the movie. Myers reflected on his perception of his role opposite Bill Hader. I thought my job was just to be Stefon's foil, and then Mulaney wrote this. It was my romantic comedy. It was Hader's final SNL sketch in which Stefon goes off to marry Anderson Cooper. Stricken with love, Seth Meyers runs after him and interrupts the wedding, punches Anderson Cooper, and brings Stefon back to the SNL studio. It was Bill's last show, and I knew I was leaving next year to host Late Night. Bill and I are holding hands. We're both starting to cry. It was so funny because I was getting married a few months later. I was like, if I don't cry at my wedding. Hader said, I don't want to do a Stefon movie. It didn't work as a sketch. That's why I was on Weekend Update. Kelsey Grammer wants to do 100 episodes of this new Frasier. Variety spoke to Kelsey Grammer, and one of the topics was Frasier's choice to wear sneakers and jeans now. Kelsey said, I think it was a natural progression for him, but also natural for me. People didn't talk about it much during the old iteration of the show, but my feet were always an issue. And I had a couple of podiatrists years ago notice on the show asking, what's going on with your feet? I have a gait issue just because I have really, really bad ankles. It's okay, but it's a little easier to wear those shoes than it is to wear a bunch of custom-made brogues and all that. I think we should go on for another 100 episodes at least. There's enough groundwork laid between these human beings. They're wonderful characters. I want to see where they go. And I want to see what happens to Frasier. I name check Kelsey Grammer all the time. I'll see somebody, they'll get a hit show and they'll leave the hit show. And I always talk about a couple people. One, Dennis Franz. Wrote NYPD Blue, never had to work again. Kelsey Grammer, hey, you want me to be Frasier again for 11 more years? Sure. You want me to be Frasier again for 100 more episodes? Sure. The other guy, Patrick Stewart, who once explained that he wasn't really excited playing Captain Picard, but they paid him enough money to do Star Trek movies after the show wrapped up that he could do Shakespeare in the Park for free all summer, and the Star Trek paid the bills. That makes sense to me. Don't leave a hit show. Kelsey talked a bit about bringing the character back and said, once Cheers ended the first time, I thought, well, Frasier's done now. It's good. We'll move on to do something else. I had a deal with Paramount to go do a different show. We worked on that for a while, and then everybody suggested that maybe it'd be best to continue Frasier in a different world, and it turned out pretty well. Once the show Frasier ended, there was some talk to continue it for a while, maybe add another year or two. I talked to then NBC head Jeff Zucker at the time. He told me that Joey was what they'd put their eggs in that basket, and they said, that was the next Frasier. And I said, well, all right, good for you. Off you go. It turned out fine. I like the idea of ending something. And then it came up a decade or so later when somebody was saying, what would Frasier be up to? And I thought, yeah, that's an interesting idea, and started percolating maybe a decade ago, honestly, about what it could look like. And then Roseanne came back with her show. And I thought the response to that was so interesting to me. Those two shows were contemporaries, and Tim Allen was still on TV. We were all sort of the same wavelength back then, and I thought this might actually bear some fruit if we do it the right way. It had to be right, though. It had to have contemporary value, and so we started hatching the plan. I really wanted David Hyde Pierce to join us, and I did my best to have him come along for the ride, and at one point he finally said, I don't really want to play the character anymore. That was fine. Then it came to me in a dream. Let's go back to Boston. There's unfinished business there. His son lives there. Suddenly I went into this new world, which, of course, is what Frasier did the first time. Good follow-up question. Had David agreed to come back, would it have been a continuation of the original Frasier? Kelsey said, no, never a continuation. A couple of other shows have basically sort of picked up where they left off, and I didn't want to do that because the guy had been away for 20 years. It had to be a maturation. He had to be a wiser guy. He had to take a few things less seriously and take some of the serious things more seriously, and that should be his family. Will we ever see Niles? He said, I mean, we have Niles' son on the show. It'd be nice to have that happen, but we won't force it. We'll see what happens. We can certainly write to it. There's arguably a lot of people in the world that have seen Frasier and would really sort of celebrate seeing him again. Whitney Cummings was on the Last Laugh podcast. She talked about how her politics have changed as, quote, the left tries to silence comedians. Whitney said, the left to me, in a lot of ways, when it comes to speech, has become unrecognizable. Because it used to be the party of free speech. It used to be the party of tolerance. It used to be the party of we criticize or at least suspicious of Big Pharma. Roseanne said this years ago when I was working with her that the left has just gone so far that a lot of people used to be on the left now feel like they're kind of in the middle. When it comes to speech, the left wants to silence people in a lot of ways, so I think comedians do find themselves criticizing that part of the left. I do think that in their minds, they're doing it to protect people and to make the world safer, but I don't believe that's how the world is made safer. I just want to make people laugh. But I do find that people that probably would consider themselves more conservative these days have a better sense of humor for sure. People always talk about censorship, but there's a lot of self-censorship that just happens because we're scared. And I take the stance of if comedians are scared, we're in trouble. It's our job to be fearless. It's our job to push back and sometimes say things that we don't mean or say things that we know are wrong and offensive just to make sure that we're not turning into some totalitarian country. This whole thing where I only believe in you having free speech if you agree with me, I think that's a really scary place to be. And I think sometimes I go too far in the direction of like, it's on us to make sure everybody still has free speech. Sometimes you can just go on stage and be funny. You don't have to be a free speech warrior all the time. I think sometimes I martyr myself a little too much where I go, everyone should be able to make fun of everyone. This is America, gosh darn it. Gabriel Iglesias is in the Santa Clauses. He enjoyed connecting with Eric Stonestreet behind the scenes from New York Verified. Gabe said, Eric and I would sit there in Christmas gear and just sit and talk about wrestling. We're both big wrestling fans. We both started playing the Who Knows More wrestling game. It's funny because we're supposed to be in this Christmas environment, and here we are talking about who got slammed. It was crazy. They started talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin. Gabe said, I've had the pleasure of hanging out with him, and my biggest bragging moment is that I got to use his toilet. That's right. I did the podcast at his house, and I think he's since changed that since having those issues. But yeah, we were hanging out afterwards, and I'm like, hey, dude, can I use your, And he's like, yeah, go ahead. Gabe started talking about Christmas movies and said, if people are saying that Die Hard was a Christmas movie, then I think you have to say Gremlins was also a Christmas movie because there's Christmas trees, there's snow, and, the Gremlins destroying Santa Claus statues. This is amazing. This is the second straight Monday. I remember to cross-plug the weekly comedy thing. That's the show I host on the Live One app. So what's this, Johnny Mac? It's kind of like this podcast, except the stories are shorter, and I can play a bit. So say I tell you a story about Maz Jobrani, I can play a clip by Maz Jobrani. All right, you intrigued? How do you get this? Grab the app. It's called Live One. Grab a free account. Look for the weekly comedy thing. There you'll find me telling you stories about people like, this week, Eliza Schlesinger, Sebastian Maniscalco, Maz Jobrani, Lewis Black, Whitney Cummings, Rodney Dangerfield, Nate Bargatze. Some comedians who might be off your radar are Andy Hendrickson, John Taylor, and DJ Dimmers, Bill Burr, you know who that is, Jim Gaffigan, and Brian Regan. The weekly comedy thing on the Live One app. Vulture profiled Kathy Griffin. She talked about her new tour and said, this show is going to be more personal because I've been going through so much crazy stuff really in front of anybody who's paying attention. I actually do have PTSD, and I'm laughing because I thought that was only for combat veterans. But apparently, if you're put under investigation by the Department of Justice and the president wants you to be charged and you're put on the no-fly list and your tour is canceled because of bomb threats and then your phone doesn't ring for 6 years and then you get cancer and lose part of your voice because half your lung is gone, you got to laugh about it. I do something called cat cow. They were curious, what's cat cow? She says, well, it's when I get on all fours like a kitty cat and then I arch my back and I'm instructed by my teacher to say the word meow. I feel like a fool, but I do it. Then I unarch my back and, wait for it, I moo like a cow. PTSD is a bitch, and when I get PTSD attacks, I can't stop vomiting. So if I have to meow like a cat and moo like a cow, I'm going to do it. I'm laughing at her joke, not her situation. When I talked about it in Vegas, I could hear a recognition type of buzz in the audience, and I went, wait a minute. I'm not the only one who does effing cat cow. Like half the audience clapped. I had no idea that in times of trouble, other people were walking around their homes meowing like a kitty cat. Her tour is called My Life on the D-List, which apparently she bought back the rights to. Kathy said, all right, you're going to laugh. I'm watching TV one night and I see, remember those Carol Burnett ads where she was like, buy the Carol Burnett show on DVD? Like an idiot. It took years and tons of money, but I bought back My Life on the D-List, the Kathy talk show, and all of my 19 specials from Bravo, NBC Universal. It cost me a fortune and lots of lawyers. Then I own my library, right? So I'm very proud of myself and I feel like a kick-ass businesswoman. No one wants to buy it, not even Peacock. So I'm just going to start putting it on YouTube. And I think on YouTube you get like $1 per million views. God help me. People profiled some of the best voice actors in the industry. They are, of course, Sadie Sandler and Sonny Sandler, who happen to be related to Adam Sandler and happen to be in his new movie Leo. At the premiere, Adam Sandler spoke to people about the advice he has shared with them about their careers so far. Adam Sandler said, I tell them to make sure you feel good about what you do and how hard you worked and you judge yourself. Don't let too many people try to get in your head. If you feel like you gave it your all, that's all you can ask. It's always fun to be with my family. Adam, will the Sandlers work together on any other projects? He said, you never know. But we had a great time at that Bat Mitzvah movie. And this one, we started doing this 4 years ago, and they grew up a little bit while doing this movie, so it's been really nice. And Cracked asked, can Eddie Murphy's Beverly Hills Cop Axel Foley be the Top Gun Maverick of comedy? My initial reaction was no, and then I thought about it and I went, maybe? Empire Magazine released a photo of Eddie as Axel Foley. He's giving off serious 80s vibes in a Detroit Lions Letterman's jacket, swaggering around what appears to be an overturned car. Everyone's back. Eddie Murphy, Judge Reinhold, Paul Reiser. Producer Jerry Bruckheimer said, anytime Eddie Murphy walks on set, you never know what you're going to get. And it's always pretty brilliant. And that's your comedy news for today. If you like the show, tell somebody about it. They might like it too. And you can follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Overcast, Pocket Cast, wherever you get your shows. See you tomorrow.